Where are they? Margaret's sharp voice sliced through my office, making me jolt in my chair. There she was, my ex-mother-in-law, standing in the doorway with a manila envelope clutched in her perfectly manicured hands. Her face was twisted with fury, and right behind her stood Amanda, my ex-husband's sister, looking just as angry. Where are who? I asked, trying to stay calm as I waved to my assistant to hold my calls. It had been 5 peaceful years since my divorce from David. I never thought I'd see the Hendersons again. Don't play dumb, Victoria, Margaret snapped, marching toward my desk. Our grandchildren. David's children. The ones you've been hiding from us for 6 years. I stared at her, stunned. What children? David and I never had kids. Amanda yanked some photos from the envelope and slapped them onto my desk, sending my case files flying. These children. Stop lying. My hands shook as I picked up the first photo. A boy and a girl, maybe 5 or 6, playing in someone's backyard. They had dark hair like mine and a hint of David in their features. But I had never seen them before. I don't understand, I said, looking between them. These aren't my children. David and I tried for years, we couldn't have kids. That's part of why we divorced. More lies, Margaret barked. We have proof. Medical records. Birth certificates. School documents. Everything. My head spun. I had never been pregnant. Our fertility treatments had all failed, that was one of the reasons David walked away. Get out, I said, rising to my feet. I don't know what game this is, but you need to leave. Now. Or what? Amanda sneered. You'll move the kids again. Like you did before. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice cracking. I've never had children. I've never moved anyone. Margaret pulled out her phone. We are calling our lawyer. We have rights. You can't keep our grandchildren from us forever. I grabbed my own phone and called Sarah, my lawyer and the one person who knew everything about my marriage. She'd know how to handle this madness. Fine, I said as I hit call. Let's involve lawyers. I can prove I've never had children. Margaret kept ranting as more photos spilled onto my desk, birthday parties, beach trips, Christmas mornings. The same children. Smiling, growing. Still strangers to me. Sarah, I said when she answered, try not to panic, I need you at my office. Now. David's family is here saying I have kids I've been hiding. They've brought photos and documents. There was a pause. Don't say anything else, Sarah said, firm and quick. I'll be there in 15. Don't let them leave. Just then, my assistant Jackie appeared at the door. Victoria, there's a man here asking about the children. He says he's a private investigator hired by Mr. Henderson. My stomach dropped. David was behind this. But why? Send him in, I said, locking eyes with Margaret. Let's see what kind of proof you've cooked up. The man walked in, tall, uncomfortable, in a cheap suit. He introduced himself as Frank Moore and carried a thick folder. Mrs. Reed has used multiple aliases, he told them. She's moved the children between 3 states in 6 years, always ahead of Mr. Henderson. That's a lie, I cut in. I've lived in the same house for 8 years. I've worked here for 10. Check the records. Frank opened his folder and laid out the supposed evidence, school files, medical reports, even birth certificates, all showing that I, Victoria Reed, gave birth to twins on May 15, 6 years ago. But I hadn't. I would remember giving birth to twins. I would remember having children. I'd know if I were a mother, wouldn't I? A cold chill crept up my spine. There was that stretch, 3 months during my marriage, when everything blurred. I'd been deep in depression, heavily medicated, barely functioning, but still, surely I'd remember being pregnant. going through labor, holding a newborn. Wouldn't I? Before the panic could take full hold, Sarah burst into the room. Her eyes scanned the chaos, photos, documents, and Margaret's furious expression. Her jaw clenched. "Everyone sit down," she said sharply. "Victoria, don't say a word, Mr. Moore. I want to see every document you have, and I need the full name of the person who hired you, along with the timeline." Sarah took control with practiced ease, firing off legal questions while I sat frozen, my eyes drawn once again to the photos of the children. The little girl's smile, the way her nose crinkled just like David's, made my stomach twist. They looked so real, too real. But they couldn't be mine. They weren't, right? The next morning, I sat in Sarah's office, staring down at the evidence spread across her desk. After sending everyone away the night before, Sarah had spent hours going through each document the investigator brought. "These are excellent forgeries," she said, holding up a birth certificate, "but they're still fake. Look here, the hospital listed is Mercy General in Portland. That facility closed in 2015. This certificate is dated 2016. I let out a shaky breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "So I'm not losing my mind," I said. "Those kids, they're not mine." "No," Sarah confirmed, "but someone went to a lot of trouble to make it look like they are. The question is, why?" I picked up one of the photos again. The boy's dark eyes, the girl's soft curls, their features mirrored David's, and mine. The timeline could match if I had been pregnant during the time I was emotionally unstable. Sarah narrowed her eyes, her voice careful but firm. "Victoria, I need you to be completely honest with me. Is there any chance, no matter how small, that you could have had children during that period and not remembered?" I shook my head, grounding myself in the truth. "No, I was depressed. Yes, the treatments had failed again. David had already started pulling away, but I wasn't that far gone. I would remember being pregnant. I would know if I'd had children." Children. Sarah began sorting the documents into neat piles. "Then our first step is figuring out who they really are, and why your ex-husband's family is convinced they're yours." Just then, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her expression darkening. "Speaking of David, he just filed for an emergency custody hearing. He's accusing you of kidnapping his children 6 years ago, and claims he's only just tracked them down." "What?" I stood abruptly, my hands trembling. "He can't do that. I don't have any children. There are no children." "Sit down," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. "This could actually work in our favor. If he pushes this in court, he'll have to testify under oath. We can force him to explain where these so-called missing children have been." I sank back into my chair, mind spinning. What if David did have children somewhere? What if he had them with someone else, while we were still married? Sarah's eyes lit up, reading my thoughts. "That is actually a really solid theory. Hang on." She spun toward her computer and began typing rapidly. Minutes later, she leaned back with a triumphant smile. "Found her. Emily Carson, pediatric nurse at County General. Started working there 7 years ago, right around when you and David were in the middle of fertility treatments." She turned the screen toward me. I froze. There was Emily, blonde, cheerful, standing beside 2 dark-haired children, the same children from the photos. "Those are her kids," I whispered. "But why would David?" "Because 6 years ago," Sarah said, scrolling through Emily's social media timeline, she filed a sealed paternity suit against a prominent local businessman. "Given the timing, David," I said hollowly, "he got her pregnant while I was going through fertility treatments." The puzzle pieces slammed into place. The timing of my breakdown, David claiming I had been pregnant but forgot, his family believing the children were mine. "He's been lying to everyone," I said, rage burning in my chest. "He told them I was the mother, to cover up his affair, and now that Emily's gone public, he's doubling down," Sarah finished. "He needs to maintain the lie, or everything unravels." But he slipped up. She held up a birth certificate. "He listed you as the mother, but kept Emily's original names for the twins, James and Lily Carson, not Henderson, not read. She gathered the documents and tucked them into a folder. The emergency hearings tomorrow morning. I think it's time Emily Carson shared her truth. I stared at the photo again, David's children, but not mine. His family really believes I stole their grandchildren, I said softly. They think I'm some kind of monster. That's the story David fed them, Sarah replied. It was easier than admitting what he really did. I stood, spine straightening with resolve. Then let's give them the truth. As I stepped out of her office, my phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. We're praying you'll do the right thing and bring our grandchildren home. I saved the message. Tomorrow, they'd find out what the right thing really meant, and it wouldn't be what they expected. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. David sat at the plaintiff's table, smug and polished, just like he'd been during our divorce. Behind him, Margaret and Amanda stared daggers in my direction. Sarah had timed it perfectly. I was seated just a few feet from where Emily would enter with the twins. When she walked in, David's face turned to ash. What is she doing here? He hissed at his lawyer. Before he got an answer, the judge entered and called the hearing to order. David's attorney jumped to his feet, launching into a dramatic speech, painting me as a delusional woman who had stolen 2 innocent children, denying a grieving family their rights. I watched Margaret clutch a tissue to her eyes, completely caught up in the show. She had no idea the truth was seconds away from landing like a thunderclap. And when it did, there would be no going back. Your Honor, Sarah began confidently, standing at the defense table. Before we proceed, I'd like to submit into evidence the official birth certificates of James and Lily Carson, along with the sealed paternity suit filed 6 years ago by their mother, Emily Carson. David's attorney immediately objected, but Sarah didn't flinch. The children Mr. Henderson claims were stolen, she said, gesturing toward the gallery. They are sitting right here, with their actual mother. The only theft that's happened is Mr. Henderson's attempt to steal their identities and the truth from everyone, including his own family. The judge studied the documents silently, then looked over the top of his glasses at David. Mr. Henderson, he said sharply, would you care to explain why there are 2 different birth certificates for these children? David's face paled. I don't know. There must be some kind of mistake. Emily's voice rang out, calm and resolute. The mistake was thinking you could rewrite history. David, these are my children, our children, the same ones you denied ever having, until it suited you to claim them. There was a collective gasp behind us. Margaret and Amanda looked as though the floor had dropped out from beneath them. The judge called for a brief recess to review the materials, but the real damage had already been done. David's carefully built illusion was crumbling, publicly, and irreversibly. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Margaret approached me, her face gray and stricken. Victoria, we had no idea, she whispered. David told us you had a breakdown, that you'd taken the babies and disappeared. And you believed him, I said quietly, just like you believed him when he said our fertility treatments failed because of my mental state. Because that was easier than accepting your son wasn't the man you thought he was. Margaret opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, Emily arrived with the twins. Mrs. Henderson, she said gently, I think it's time you properly met your grandchildren. I stepped aside, letting Margaret move forward, this time to face the truth head-on. The anger in her eyes was gone, replaced by something far more painful, shame. Back inside, the judge's ruling was swift and decisive. David's emergency custody petition was denied, and the court ordered an investigation into the forged birth records. Charges for document fraud were pending. As court adjourned, David brushed past me, his face tight with rage. I didn't move. I hope it was worth it, I said flatly. All those lies, just to avoid admitting you had an affair. He stopped and turned, voice bitter. You were always so perfect, the successful lawyer, the victim. You have no idea what it's like to disappoint everyone. No, I said calmly, but I know exactly what it's like to be disappointed by you, by your lies, and by a family who believed them. 6 months later, I received a letter from Emily. Inside was a photo of the twins at their 7th birthday party, laughing, surrounded by cake and balloons, and flanked by the Henderson family. David wasn't in the picture. He was serving time for filing false documents. They ask about you sometimes, Emily had written. I tell them you're the brave lady who helped bring their grandparents back into their lives. Maybe someday they'll understand the rest. I pinned the photo next to my law degree and a framed article from the Post, the one detailing David's conviction. Not as a symbol of revenge, but of something far more important. Truth. Reputation. Closure. Margaret now sends me a Christmas card every year. Each one is handwritten. Each one includes a different apology. I keep them in a drawer. Unopened. Some wounds don't heal just because someone says they're sorry. As for me, I sold the house, changed cities, and started over. My new office has a view of the sunrise. Every morning, the light hits my desk, and I remind myself. Sometimes, the things you lose are the very things that set you free. The children who were never mine are happy now, loved, safe, and finally surrounded by people who know the truth. That's worth more than any courtroom win. And some evenings, when everything is quiet, I glance at their photo, and I smile. Because doing the right thing often means letting go of the lies we once tried to believe.